You know, I was thinking about doing a story in Philadelphia on students at Temple University being attacked the day that they were moving in before classes actually were set to start by a bunch of 13 and 15-year-olds. However, fortunately, there were arrests made in that particular case, and me watching that video led to this video in suggestions, which is, of course, that the police in North Philadelphia are seeking a carjacking suspect as young as 10 years old. And to be clear, these are armed carjackings. That is what's going on in the city of Philadelphia, and I think it's worth us talking about it. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Also in North Philadelphia, police want to know if you recognize two kids here, and they're wanted in a rash of carjackings at gunpoint.
So right off the top, I want to clarify something. They're not looking for two childrens. In this particular story, it appears that the older suspect is about 17 years old, and the younger suspect could be 10, could be 12. We're not exactly sure, but the point is, one of these suspects in these armed carjackings is a child, an actual child. The other one is a borderline adult who should be treated as an adult. But one of the reasons why youthful crime is so persistent in the city of Philadelphia is because District Attorney Larry Krasner doesn't want to prosecute anyone for anything, and that is doubly true when it comes to the youths, because they're just innocent angel Aladdins. And wouldn't you feel horrible if you were to ruin this 10-year-old's life by holding him accountable? Better to let him shoot somebody in the face in order to steal a car than actually have some consequences for him. But let's roll into the segment so you can hear about the nature of these carjackings.
Do you recognize these young faces? Philadelphia police released this surveillance video of the pair wanted in connection to 4 gunpoint robbery carjackings in the last week and a half.
First of all, I just want to point out that there's a reason why a bunch of different left-wing areas that were forcing these masks for COVID-19 onto your face are now regretting those decisions, because right here you have people wearing a mask in order to obscure their identity. Now, to be clear for everybody out there in the audience, if you see these young people, these youths wearing masks, COVID masks, in the outside during the day, during the night, whenever, you should be suspicious. You should be concerned. You should be worried. This is obviously to obscure their identity because, as we all know, young boys are probably the least concerned about the virus. But on top of that, the virus was never as threatening for them as the older demographics. So it was ridiculous to force the mask upon them. But now we have a built-in excuse in order for them to obfuscate their identity that is preventing law enforcement from doing their job and is enabling the criminal.
One is roughly 17 years old and the other just 10 or 12.
Now, I'd also be remiss to point out that the fact that we have around a 10-year-old as a participant in these crimes reminds me a lot of Riley Freeman from the Boondocks, somebody who was once thought to be a ridiculous, over-the-top fictional character, but it turns out, as the great Anna Kasparian says, it's real.
It's real, guys. It's real.
I just said that, Anna. You didn't need to interrupt me. But they end up interviewing people on the streets, and they say they're absolutely shocked by this behavior. And I will just point out that the people that they interview should in no way, shape, or form be shocked at all about this behavior. Philadelphia saw dramatic spikes in crime post the Black Lives Matter riots, post the election of Larry Krasner, who they re-elected as district attorney, by the way, including all-time, in terms of raw numbers, homicides ever for their city, which, by the way, were slightly below the all-time per capita homicide rate that Philadelphia has ever seen. So again, nobody should be shocked by this. And by the way, when you see data sets that say, wow, crime down in Philadelphia, understand that it is down from that all-time level peak, or in and around all-time level peak. So yeah, it's a decrease, but it's a decrease from what? It's like me saying murder's down 30% today. They're like, what do you mean? I say, well, only 7 people were murdered today, but 10 people were murdered yesterday. Crime down. Isn't that amazing? Shouldn't we all celebrate? That's exactly what the left is trying to sell to all of us by sampling of this group of cities and comparing their data to some of the worst points in recent history or all-time history, and we shouldn't buy into it. We shouldn't get suckered into it. And by the way, there is a direct relation with how Larry Krasner treats young offenders and their propensity to re-offend. 10-year-old or 12-year-old, if I'm being generous, stealing cars, pointing guns at people's faces, threatening to murder them for their vehicles. And by the way, this isn't to sell the cars. This isn't because, oh my God, their parents, they're just starving. These are for joyrides. They crash and damage them up.
It's super crazy to me because I teach 5th grade, so that is their age group. And it's like, you are a literal baby.
So they interview this woman who says she's a teacher. She says she teaches 5th grade. And she says that this is shocking and horrifying because she teaches these kids and she can't believe that they would go out and commit crimes this way. And I can only assume, based on her being shocked by this, that she must teach in schools not in North Philadelphia, because if you look at the disciplinary records of young black kids in and around these age groups, it's absolutely devastating, and the last thing you would be is shocked if you actually had a lot of experience with these children, because guess what? We do all these different ways in order to normalize the discipline, normalize the suspensions, never accounting for the behavior, but as you can see, as is true on the outside with carjackings, is true on the inside with fights and all sorts of problems inside the school. These kids are acting up in ways that are absolutely insane. Now, she also has another thing that she communicated to the local news, and I would like to address that as well.
Chanel Washington of West Philly is apartment shopping near 20th and Girard, where the most recent carjacking happened.
Miss teacher lady, I don't have to experience these children's in my day-to-day life, even though she's from West Philly, and I think West Philly might be worse than North Philly, but don't hold me to that. I don't know the neighborhood all that well. Maybe you should look for an apartment in a different area. I would just say, if somebody did the carjackings, if 10-year-olds are pointing guns at people and threatening to murder them for their cars, that maybe, just maybe, is not the neighborhood that you want to be moving in. Now, I understand maybe she can't afford to live in a better neighborhood, but the fact of the matter is, this is a terrible area, and you should move out of it, and honestly, everybody should move out of it. It should collapse. We should build a sinkhole, bury it, and then just forget about it, start all over, build again, because obviously, we have run afoul in North Philadelphia.
Police say just before 6 a.m. last Thursday, a 74-year-old woman was walking to her car when the two males armed with a gun approached, knocked her to the ground, then grabbed her keys and wallet.
That's not fair to anybody. People are already on edge and making sure that like they're trying to be as safe as they can, and then you're minding your business at 6 a.m, walking to your car, and then something like that happens.
Yeah, it's beyond not fair. It's criminal. It's disgusting behavior. 73-year-old woman walking to her car, maybe even possibly going to work if she's leaving at 6 a.m, and these two kids armed with a gun, that's not enough for them. They have to throw her to the ground violently in order to take her keys, in order to steal her vehicle. It's disgusting behavior. It's inexcusable behavior. It's thug-like behavior. And again, I will point out that the 10-year-old is not only likely to get a slap on the wrist from District Attorney Larry Krasner, but if the other carjacker is also under the age of 18, he will also almost assuredly receive a slap on the wrist. On top of that, if he's over 18, he might receive a slap on the wrist because District Attorney Larry Krasner thinks that those people are the victims, those two in the surveillance video, and that, of course, is the victims of our capitalist, white supremacist society, which is why he can't prosecute them. And honestly, he really might have to go after the manufacturer of the car, because why don't they have something that prevents a 73-year-old lady from actually, getting her car stolen by getting a gun pointed at her and, getting thrown to the ground. Now, obviously, I'm being hyperbolic right there, but to be clear, we have not been that far off when it comes to thefts of Kias, where all these different municipalities, instead of prosecuting the Kia boys, have decided to sue the manufacturer because they're too easy to steal. Again, pay no attention to the fact that Kias are sold all around the world, and the only place that they appear to be stolen over and over and over again are certain cities in the United States of America. It's obviously on the manufacturer because they can't resist stealing those cars.
I really don't fear walking around here, but I can't say that for everyone.
So this guy right here says, I don't fear walking around this area, but the thing is, you should. You definitely should. There's a 10-year-old armed with a gun, nowhere near the moral compass to understand the choices that he's making, with a 17-year-old, possibly in a gang, by the way, that are willing to murder people, attack old ladies even, in order to get vehicles for joyrides. You should definitely be worried. Maybe you're like, I'm not worried because I don't even have a car. Maybe they'll just shoot me for my wallet. But it's a chance that you have to take when you live in this neighborhood because that's just America. That's just something that you have to deal with. I'm going to keep voting for Larry Krasner. In fact, now that you said it, let me pull out my phone and donate to his next campaign right now because he sure definitely deserves it for the way that he's going to let these kids out immediately. And maybe they'll blow away my neighbor tomorrow. But I just want you to know, I'm not scared to be in this neighborhood. It doesn't bother me. It's non-threatening because it's just sometimes you have to deal with normal problems like job, inflation, and all that. And other times you have to deal with a 10-year-old about to murder you, and that's just as normal.
I try to avoid walking around by myself, just have common sense.
So this woman says she tries to avoid walking around by herself in and around this area because it's common sense. And I will also point out that it is very likely that this woman is pretty, but she does in fact cover her face for the length of this interview, which is honestly unfortunate, but the local news decided to stage her directly in the sunlight. On top of that, I'm not a fan of those tattoos. Just not my thing. I don't understand the obsession with tattoos. It used to be some like rogues and renegades would get tattoos, but now everybody has tattoos, and bad tattoos. And I know that this is not the purpose of the video, but it needs to be said. Cut it out, ladies. Enough. I'm not interested in it. And honestly, even though I'm married, I am still the captain of what everyone in the world is interested in. So on behalf of the world, we're not interested in it.
The carjacking spree began on Friday, August 16th on the 1000 block of Girard. Philly police say the armed suspects walked up to a victim standing outside of his car and took off with it. Another carjacking happened on the 1300 block of West Cumberland Street in North Philly, and the fourth occurred on the 1300 block of West Ontario, right after the suspects crashed the car they had stolen 3 days earlier, according to police. In both of those cases, the victims were sitting inside of their cars early in the morning when the juveniles approached with a gun.
So you just got a little bit of a breakdown of the different various carjacking incidents that this 10-year-old and this alleged 17-year-old are involved in. But so you guys can understand, they're approaching people that are in and around their cars. If you're idling, they're also coming up to you, again, taking the cars at gunpoint. But they're not doing it to sell the car for parts in order to feed their starving family. It's for joyrides. It's for fun. And they actually ended up going and getting into a crash. And they desperately, in that moment, moved on in order to secure their escape to carjack another person. This is something that is a highly dangerous situation. You already have a 10-year-old holding people up at gunpoint, but you add in desperation to try to escape. And when you're in that mindset, it's only a matter of time before somebody gets killed either accidentally or intentionally because they hesitate or outright refuse to turn over their vehicle.
I am from Buffalo originally, and I don't know what is in the water in Philadelphia, but the kids here are just absolutely insane. It makes me wonder what's going on in America where the parents can't be parents anymore.
So this guy right here who says he's not scared of being in this particular area says he's originally from Buffalo, and there's something that must be in the water that's allowing these Philadelphia kids to go absolutely crazy. And I will point out for him that they are not being held accountable for this. And he talks about parents not being able to be parents, but what about the fact that police officers can't be cops? A prosecutor is actually a defense attorney, so the prosecution can't be the prosecution. And when you have a second advocate for the criminal, two public defenders instead of a prosecutor and a public defender, they keep getting let off over and over again with slaps on the wrist. So yeah, you need to change up your voting patterns. You need to stop donating to Larry Krasner and actually fight back if you want to live in a safer neighborhood. But then again, a couple of minutes ago, they just showed us that you seem to be completely oblivious, but then you're not oblivious, which honestly I find to be rather confusing and rather ridiculous. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. Obviously, if you recognize any of these criminal suspects, turn over that information to the police so that they can be brought into the station for their slap on the wrist and then their commendation from Larry Krasner. But other than that, that's all I really got to tell you. If you like this video, then show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me with the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a 10-year-old carjacking suspect that is still on the loose. Be careful out there, guys. Till next time.